We deal in the stones and the bones and the rocks and the way people move the mountain around. The observations of what the maunga looks like as a result of people having made modifications to it. Very few of the Auckland volcanic cones have had any excavations on them. Mangaraya's had one, and that was when they put in the water tank on the top, the water reservoir. Mount Albert, Mount Roskill when they put the water reservoir in, Alex Mountain out by the airport when they were quarrying it. So very little archaeology has been done on the Auckland cones.
And what is the reason for that?
Archaeologists like to spend their summers excavating by the beach. So they spent many years on the Coromandel, many years in Northland. No one wanted to excavate in their backyards. These terraces, as we go around, could have up to 4 or 5 buried terraces underneath it. So if we were to do an excavation, we would find all of those different living surfaces at different levels on the one terrace. A sort of 16th, 17th century for this mountain. There have been 2 small excavations done here in the 1980s, down by the lower slope, down by where the caretakers' cottage is, by the roundabout. And we got some radiocarbon dates from there. And another one was when the Summit car park was enlarged in the 1980s. So we know a little bit about this maunga, but it's mainly surface recording rather than actual excavation up here. When the Mount Eden Highway Board was set up in 1867, and that was kind of the forerunner to a council. The way they raised money to do roading around the Mount Eden area as it was being developed was by giving concessions to quarry around the slopes. So where Government House is now in Eden Garden, this cone was quarried, and it started quite early on. The jail, of course, is built on a lava flow. Prisoners in the 1950s, 1850s, had to quarry out the stone to build their own jail. This mountain has had 2 eruptions on it, and that the earlier cone is towards the front, and that the water reservoirs now on that artificially flattened area were placed into what was sort of part of the rim of the original volcano, and that the crater of it may have been in that gap between the kiosk and the reservoir where the buses now park. And then this later crater erupted, and sort of the lava and the walls that built up around it have buried part of that earlier volcano. We do know that there were anti-aircraft guns here. The logic says that they were up on the highest point, but we really don't know. But the interesting thing is that there's always more than one version of history, and I was told a number of different places that there were no guns. There were no guns up here. Yes, there were 4 guns, and they were situated up in the Summit car park. No, they weren't. They were on the next high point down. A whole range of responses. So in the local paper, asking did anyone have any information on could they remember where the anti-aircraft guns had been placed, because we hadn't been able to find any information in National Archives. And so I had a number of phone calls from people, men who had been schoolboys at Auckland Grammar at the time, and it may have been theoretically and officially closed off, but I think every schoolboy in the Mount Eden area came up here because it was a challenge. And
some of the schoolgirls from Epsom Girls as well.
Well, it's all about the boys. The problem with the kaikuyu is it gets long, it gets dry underneath. In a dry summer it becomes a real fire hazard. And there have been fires on the mountain in the past. In the 1940s, when they took sheep off the mountain, there was a fire, summer of 47, 48 I think. They then had to re-sow it and put cattle on it.
Why did they put cattle instead of sheep back?
Because of sheep rustling.
Sheep
Sheep rustling and dogs. They're aiming to establish microlena, which is a native grass which doesn't grow very high, and the idea is that eventually that will clothe the mountain. I think that it's a dream because the kikuyu is very aggressive and it will swamp the slow growing microlena.